Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Water and Communications workshop. And we are a special program that has been co-developed together with the Grundfos Foundation. I think it's time for me to introduce to you the first speaker of the day, Elisa Savelli, researcher at Uppsala University. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me to this very interesting workshop.
And Elisa, you are calling in from, not from Uppsala this time. Where are you?
This time I'm in Italy, in my hometown.
Thank you. And we have people from all over the world basically joining us today. So that's great. You are going
good afternoon, good morning, everyone.
Yes. And you are going to talk about social inequality as a main driver for urban water crisis. And you're going to tell us about a study that you especially did in Cape Town.
So again, good morning or good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you are. It's very nice for me to be here today. And as Görrel was explaining, today I would like to share with you the result of a latest study that we published recently in the journal Nature Sustainability, where we argued that social inequalities are drivers of urban water crisis. And I would like to start by defining and explaining that that I understand urban water crisis as events where an urban area experiences significant shortage or inadequate access to clean and safe water. And also to remind you that urban water crisis represents today one of the biggest challenges that society must address, especially considering that during the last 2 decades alone, more than 80 large metropolitan areas have experienced water crisis in the form of either droughts or extreme water shortages. And also future projections are even more alarming since urban water crises are expected to increase either by becoming more frequent or by becoming more severe in the near future due to human pressure on the water system. And because of this human pressure, scientists, engineering and physical scientists have started to include human activities in their definition of water crisis. So according to their most recent understanding, scientists give society a prominent role, one where human activities can influence or reshape different manifestations of water crisis by either reducing the amount of water available in the hydrological systems or the soil, or by inducing shortages of supply due to high demands. So this, according to such analysis to engineering and physical scientists, the main driver of water crisis are due to the increasing human pressure on the water system due to population growth and urbanization, but also to the impact of climate change, i.e. droughts or rising temperature. According to the same explanation or engineering and natural scientists, to face water crisis, the solutions that are invoked are often techno-managerial solutions to water crisis. And such solutions are usually aimed at smoothing the impact of water crisis rather than tackling the root causes. They aim at improving efficiency of the existing system or developing innovative technologies or new adaptation strategies. But what we argue, or I argue throughout my throughout the paper, is that such understanding and their resulting techno-managerial approach seem to overlook the complexity of the social processes which intersect with water system and the production of water crisis. So in general, engineering, physical sciences, they tend to consider society as homogeneous and social processes as apolitical. But this is problematic. This is problematic because society is not homogeneous, and there is always one individual or social group that have a disproportionate agency relative to other most vulnerable ones. And at the same time, considering society or social process as political, overlook the political economic mechanisms that drive every human activity and every interaction with the human system. So, what I think is that to avoid such a reduction in interpretation of society and to be able to account for the political processes that reshape human-water interaction, we need an active engagement with critical social sciences. And this interdisciplinary effort would expose inequalities and their power dynamic that intersect with the production of water crisis and their unequal impact. So I decided to apply such an interdisciplinary approach to Cape Town. There, in the study, or in Cape Town case study, I combine hydroclimatological explanation of water crisis with the political ecology insight about Cape Town urban geography. So such an approach, such a political ecology understanding, enabled me to explain that since colonial time, during apartheid, and more recently throughout neoliberal policies, the city of Cape Town followed an unequal economic growth model, one that privileged some social groups at the expense of social and environmental justices. So throughout the different political economic regimes, public policy in Cape Town promoted large-scale investment in and for the development of the white area, disregarding at the same time the interests of the rest of the population. And this resulted into what you see in the picture, or else a highly uneven society and a very segregated urban geography. So this means, what does it mean in terms of water access and water consumption? It means that the privileged white elite received high quality and highly subsidized water services, while Black areas were fully serviced by rudimentary infrastructures similar to yacht hubs or public standpipes. So these diverse access and services enable the white privilege to reach unsustainable level of water consumption, as you can see in the graph, while at the outskirts of the city, people experience chronic water insecurity. As you can see, one example of outskirt neighborhood is Filippi in the graph. So in this uneven urban context, when since 2015 the precipitation dropped from 780 to 250 milliliters for 3 consecutive years, the water level of Cape Town major dams dropped and reached 12% of the usable water, which means that the water supply system was almost running dry. And this meteorological and hydrological condition, meteorological or hydrological droughts, led to an unprecedented water crisis, also internationally known as Day Zero, or else the day in which the city would have completely run out of water. So to face such crisis, the municipality decided to implement a series of measures, which I consider techno-managerial measures, because they were homogeneously tackling every citizen social groups. And these techno-managerial solutions were basically trying to address the issue of habitability and reduced precipitation and the increased consumption. But at the same time, disregarding the unequal geography and the unequal distribution and the unequal consumption of water across the city. But our analysis showed that not our critical social science analysis showed that not every individual reaches the same level of water use. nor is equally responsible for the city unsustainable consumption. So usually the most privileged groups, they live in spacious houses with various amenities such as garden and swimming pool, and therefore they consume a sustainable level of water, contrary to the informal dwellers that do not have taps nor toilets in their premises. So thanks to my social scientist understanding of the crisis, I, together with the team of colleagues, I have been able to account for such diversity and disaggregate the water consumption across the different social groups. I built an interdisciplinary model which revealed that the elite and the upper income classes, so are the highest consumer across the city, consume the highest amount of water per day. And much of this consumption is due to their amenities or their luxurious habits. So this interdisciplinary model is able to show that despite the elite and the upper classes represent about 13% of the total population, together they use more than a half of the city water. Whereas lower income households and informal dwellers, which together represent the 61% of Cape Town population, do not even reach 23% of the city water with their consumption, do not even consume 22% of the city. And these unequal patterns of consumption translates also over time into unequal and different trajectories of water consumption over time. And as you can see, each social group will have different trajectory of water consumption, but also different interaction with the water system of the city of Cape Town. So when reproducing drought period, the model finds that during water restriction, elite and high-income social group record the highest reduction of water use relative to other groups. But this reduction is largely due to the interruption of non-essential water uses, i.e. amenities. Conversely, a lower income group cannot easily reduce their water consumption because their uses are mostly related to their livelihood or their survival, basically. Our critical social science analysis also was able to show that and take into account of the fact that privileged households can access and afford a wider range of private water sources relative to lower income groups. They can purchase large quantities of drinking water, they can access spring, truck water, and in the longer term, they can develop private water supply systems by installing either rainwater harvesting tank or, as you can see in the picture, also drilling borehole in their premises. Low-income areas do not have the financial resources nor the ability to do so. So what we saw in our model, in fact, is that during the water restriction, the restriction during the water crisis, the inability to access to sufficient public water triggered an increase in the consumption of private water sources, such as groundwater, but exclusively for those social groups that can afford it. Low-income groups do not have access to these private sources. So ultimately, we argue that this unequal consumption and this unequal response to the water crisis are very tied also to the socioeconomic features that we have explained at the beginning, those features that characterize Cape Town urban fabric. So more precisely, the way the social groups consume water and respond to the city water crisis is rooted in the distinctive political economic regimes that have shaped Cape Town urban space and the condition of water access and insecurity. To test the extent to which unsustainable water consumption by the elite contributed to Cape Town urban water crisis, but also more in general, how unsustainable consumption of the elites in the world, across the world, contribute to urban water crisis. The model simulates a number of scenarios and examines the implication of different drivers on the long-term pattern of consumption. So we examine, for instance, the impact of population growth, of climate change, of increased or reduced inequalities relative to the baseline. And it appears that an increase of inequalities and unsustainable consumption by the most privileged group has the potential to be even more detrimental than the effect of population growth on consumption or of the effect of climate change on local hydrology. So ultimately, the scenarios that consider a more equal water distribution along with more sustainable levels of consumption would significantly reduce the total amount of water used and eventually lessen the burden on the urban water balance. And this, with respect to Cape Town and Day Zero, means that if every social group would have used a similar amount of water and limited the use of private water sources, such as groundwater, etc., for their amenities, then the city could have averted some of the worst effects of Day Zero. So we conclude that it was not eventually population growth or climate change alone to drive Cape Town water crisis. Instead, the water crisis was driven by the unsustainable water consumption or by the elite. So we can state that the techno-managerial measure or solution are not able to face such crises because they are not able to tackle those inequalities that are at the root causes of such crises. How did we reach such a conclusion? How could we find the root causes of urban water crisis? So through the implementation of an interdisciplinary study, which included hydroclimatological understanding of Cape Town water system, but also a critical social science understanding of the city and its urban space. Thanks to this interdisciplinary understanding, we have been able to construct a system dynamic model that is able to account for inequality and unequal consumption across the city, as you can see basically in this picture. And also thanks to this interdisciplinary understanding, we have been able to visualize those inequalities that we often hear or we often talk about in critical social sciences journal, but we never see so blatantly. And thanks to this approach and to this visualization of data and quantification of inequality, I can say that we reached a large media or online attention, and in less than a month we reached 25,000 access to this article. And the article is, I don't know if you can see in the picture, is amongst the 5% of the article ever tracked by Altimetric. So with this is the last information I wanted to share with you, and I would like to conclude by saying that there is nothing natural about the elitist overexploitation of water resources and the marginalization of other social groups. Water inequalities and their unsustainable, their unjust water crises are a product of history, politics, and power. So our responsibility is to understand this politics, this power, and eventually reimagine a society in which elitist overconsumption at the expenses of other citizens and the environment is not tolerated. with this message, I think I conclude, and I will stop share my screen right now. So I'm welcome any question you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Elisa, for those words and for presenting your recent research. If you have any comments or any questions to Elisa, please write them in the chat. Or if you have similar experience from your own countries and your own cities, please write them down in the chat as well. I was wondering, you were talking a little bit about the how you reach out with the articles now and the coverage. And when you and I spoke earlier, you said that basically this was the first time when you combined social science findings with hard numbers, put it that way. And that helped you a lot to get the message out, because before, basically the same research hadn't really reached out to a broader audience. Can you explain a bit?
Yes, correct. And basically, we wrote a similar study. It wasn't a model, it wasn't a system dynamic model, but it was a study that used quantitative data and combined it with qualitative analysis. And basically the study that Don't Blame the Rain study argued the same things, that basically it was the overconsumption of the elite that had produced such a harsh water crisis. But I faced a lot of difficulties to publish this paper in the Journal of Hydrology, because they would contest the fact that it was not enough scientific, the qualitative analysis of the study. And also, yes, for the lack of sufficient quantitative data. So throughout my work over the years, I started to think that I wanted to, in a way, validate my story and validate my first work by developing a model that would show, visualize, and quantify what my other paper was arguing. And indeed, together we built a team of hydroinformatics, hydrologists, critical social scientists, etc. All together, we built this model, which combined, as I said, critical understanding of the city and hydroclimatological understanding of the water systems. This integration of this work enabled us to quantify and visualize the inequalities we were talking about in the other study. And it went, in a way, it went viral, and many newspapers contacted me, and because they wanted to know more about the study. But to be honest with you and with everyone else in this workshop, this was already said in my other paper. So, and the same or very similar argument, without the numbers and without the visualization of the inequalities.
Right, so basically, as we are also not only a water, but also a communication workshop, the fact that you had interdisciplinary study and could provide the same results from like two angles, that helped in getting out the research results.
Very much so.
Yeah. And we have Sandra Ungerson here from Salt Springs Island in Canada. She says, I'm sure that living on an island, we would see similar results. Thank you so much for this important research. Would love to duplicate this study where we live. So you now have a new island where you could maybe do some more studies, Elisa?
Well, thank you, Sandra, for these words. And I think that when we wrote this paper, we used Cape Town as an example because we needed the data But this model and this analysis can be replicated in many places across the world. I often gave the example of Sao Paulo, of Barcelona, even in Europe, and yes, indeed, I'm sure that you know why this model could give similar results on specific islands where there are a lot of elites that use water sources and private borehole, etc.
I was also wondering, I mean, considering the fact or the result is basically like, if we have equal water distribution, we will have less of, or not even, maybe not even any urban water crisis. Have you had any reactions from policymakers, politicians? I mean, at the end of the day, they are the ones that are shaping a lot of the water systems and driving the utilities in cities and urban centers.
I had a lot of media attention. I had citizen attention sending me email. Someone from Uppsala, really, that sent me documents, etc., and trying to tell me, thank you, because I'm trying to state these, or I'm trying to push forward this argument for years to the municipality of Uppsala or to other municipalities in Sweden, but no one has listened to me. So I really want your help. He wanted my help to push forward its point to the local governments, to the local government. And this is one example from civil society, citizens. No politician has or policymaker has reached to me yet, and but it will be nice to probably have a conversation with them, maybe through CN to the organization I work with, etc. This is an important point.
It is totally.
Yeah. So everyone, sorry.
No, that conversation would be very interesting to listen into.
Yeah.
Anne says, where can we find the article? Or sorry if I missed that.
I can.
Do you have some good links that you can post in the chat, perhaps?
I will share with you the link of the article on Nature.
Yeah.
I type it here on the chat. I hope it's fine for you.
Yeah. Perfect. And Marissa says, we did have a crisis in Monterey 2 years ago. It is mainly an industrial city. Has any academic from Mexico reached you, Liza?
No, not from Mexico. They reached me, other academics from other parts of the US, the US, but not South America or North Central America. But I studied about, but I know that there was a very severe water crisis in Mexico, and I've read article about that, and I think that an analysis about Ciudad del Mexico water crisis would give similar results. I don't know about Monterey, and to be honest with you, and I don't know how an industrial area would, which type of result could give an industrial area. But it would be very interesting to analyze this power dynamics in such an industrial area. So to show who is using more for what, for which reason, and why. And so it's I would be very interested in looking at what is the case study or what is the crisis about and why.
Right. And Anne also says that we have a water project with C40 cities. I'd love to connect you with them, as they work directly with mayors to improve climate resilience in the world's mega cities. I'll make sure that connection happens.
Thank you. I would love to.
And I'm just making a note of that. And last reflection from my side, I wanted to stay a little bit with politicians and policymakers. So why do you think that policymakers and politicians often, or maybe always, overlook the aspect of inequality as a main driver for urban water crisis?
Constituency, the election, I don't know, power. I would say the most, the easiest answer, or the first answer I have in my mind is power. Because they need a certain electorate, or because it's not attractive to implement certain policies. And so because of the electorate, because it's not attractive to implement certain policies, and because of some political interest that they have to promote certain activity. But also, I have another answer. As I was saying before, most of our techno-managerial solutions are based on engineering and natural science understanding of water and human system. And such an understanding is very much simplistic. Sorry, I don't want to use this word, but it's consider society as homogeneous. So if we base our analysis, our policies on exclusively engineering and natural sciences, of course, we will look at techno-managerial solutions. So this is a bit also another reason why, because of positivistic understanding of or approach of scientists.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elisa. Our time is up. If there's no more comments or questions in the chat, we're going to move on in the program. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
I will connect you and Anne for further discussions with the network. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you. Much of the feedback that I have received from those of you who had joined the program 2021 and 2022 is the wish for a little bit more of interactivity and more practice. So I was thinking that before we have our next speaker, we are going to have a more practical and interactive session. And we are going to put some of the advice from previous speakers into practice so that we actually use our new knowledge from this year's workshop. And I was quite intrigued and interested in the top line test that Will de Freitas from The Conversation spoke about. And for those of you who missed Will's presentation, it basically means to present your story in a one-sentence summary, not two-sentence summary, one-sentence summary. It's difficult, but it's a very useful exercise that we're going to do now. And I mean, a lot of people speak about the 30-second elevator pitch. Think about it like that. But as I said, one sentence. You will all get now 4 minutes to think about a water story that you like to tell your colleagues about, why it matters, and why a potential backer or editor should buy into it. You'll summarize that story in one sentence and you write it down. So what kind of story? Well, it can be a water project that your organization is working on that you need to describe to a donor. It can be a water story that you would like to publish and you need to describe to your editor, or it can be a water story that you are researching on and you need more funding for. After the 4 minutes, we will discuss those sentences in breakout rooms and see if you are reaching through with your message. Country WASH Coordinator, Oxfam, Somaliland, and Hussein Abdi Zakaria, Public Health Promotion Team Leader from Oxfam, Somaliland. And together, the three of us are going to talk about desalination technologies for sustainable water use, and also remote learning as critical tool in crisis. In other words, innovation for water and climate. Welcome very much to Water and Communications. I start with the first topic, desalination. It's a project that comes about due to the increasing problem of brackish water in Somalia and also due to climate change. Ali, can you explain a little bit more about this desalination project of yours?
Yes, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to talk on this session. As you have given one of the reasons why Oxfam have started desalinating the groundwater source is because of the recurrent droughts that's happening in the region, the lack of continuous recharge of the groundwater itself, and with time the groundwater has become more brackish. So in many villages where we have been doing water quality analysis, we have found out that the quality of water is deteriorating, especially around the dry season. And if you have heard, I don't know, Somalia has not received good rain in the last 3 years almost, and that's all what's affecting the groundwater, and people, it became beyond the capacity of the community to drink the water that they had, the groundwater source, which are more sustainable. And that is the reason why Oxfam thought, instead of continuously bringing water from other areas, we thought, why not we have alternative mechanisms where we can treat the existing groundwater sources. Yeah.
And so what have you learned from this project?
The project that we have is kind of innovation. We have in 4 locations, and with these 4 locations, we were trying to hypothetically understand 3 main issues. The first one is the use of the technology itself in Somalia. The use of this desalination technology that has been used mainly in industrial sector and also in many other areas in Arab countries and also other countries in the world. Can Somalia also use that? That was the number one. The second one was, because of the challenges with power, can the solar desalination work also in the system that we are having? And the third objective that we also trying to innovate was around the management model that can work better in this type of technology. So what we have learned, number one, is we have proven desalination can provide a good quality water source in Somalia, and it can be an alternative water source for communities that are 100% dependent on trucking. And we have also learned actually renewable energy, which is nowadays abundant in Somalia, including wind and solar, can be used as an opportunity to power those kind of high energy technologies, and those two has been proved, and we call it very successful. And the third thing that now we are trying our best to learn is modifying the management and sustainability, which is actually a critical issue for the water sector itself. And I hope some of the chat box messages were also capturing that. So we are still trying to innovate around, but not 100% sure. But what we are now clear is high-tech equipments cannot be managed by a community committees or all that. Somebody who have the knowledge and at least some skills when it comes to electromechanical equipments can manage. So we are going around public-private partnership, or maybe a more private government enterprise or utility that can run such kind of
right. Let us stay a little bit with your renewable energy sources. I mean, these desalination units are then run on solar and wind power. What were the greatest challenges when you started using these kind of technologies?
I think the challenge that we have, one is more of technical challenge. The other one is more of the management challenge that we have already mentioned. The management challenge is the easiest one because we initially given and handed over the technologies to the committees. We tried to train them, but unfortunately they cannot run such kind of high-tech equipments, and that's what we have learned from this project after several failures. What we have also technically we have also learned a lot, like the renewable energy it's not constant when it comes to power radiation. Sometimes you have clouds, sometimes you have less wind, and the membrane that the technology is running with requires a constant power, which you need to push the water through the membranes. Those are some of the issues that we didn't know, and later on we understood, at least we need to find alternative energy which actually does not depend on the environment, like generators. So we have a constant pressure that does not affect the membranes, and since the technology itself is new, availability of private sector who deals with the parts, the chemicals that are required is also a challenge that we have faced. But we are not yet tired. We are pushing the boundaries, and we are trying to make sure this water supply system provides communities, because it is by 90% cheaper than water tracking, which we used to spend $10 for a barrel, where we are investing $1 for one barrel now using.
And I guess when you talk about water trucking, then you also have a lot of transport costs and a lot of emissions added to that. So that's not a very sustainable way of getting the water to the people.
Yeah, and the challenge also for water tracking that we also had several years is itself is the confidence level that you will say 100% of the water that I supply to community have reached the most vulnerable. Sometimes aid diversion was happening, but the economic analysis that we have done, by almost 83%, the desalination technology is cheaper than the water tracking, and it's more sustainable. It's more, we will not limit the number of jerrycans somebody wants, but during water tracking, we only give 7.5 liter per person. But in this case, some of them, per person goes maybe 40, but depending on the demand of the house.
Right.
So,
right. Great. Thank you. Sometimes when we speak about desalination, there is also discussion about the negative impacts that desalination projects can have on groundwater. And what are your conclusions that you can draw from your project?
Thank you very much. I think that is one of the critical issues, that when we were initially thinking about desalinations, we were also not very common, not well understood what will happen to the brine, the salt water that was coming out of the desal. But the opportunity that we had was, Oxfam being a big organization, we had the opportunity to test, to do a chemical analysis of the brine that we are throwing to the ground, and we sent to one of the laboratories in Kenya, and we came to understand, outside of the antiscalant that we are using, 95% of what is in the ground is exactly what is coming out from the brine. So what we have tried to do is, we have tried to dig a kind of shallow well where it does not touch the existing shallow groundwater sources, and all the brine goes there, and then it seeps down to the ground, and again it's recharging the same. And we took some samples of the soil that remains in that, and exactly the composition of the soil that is in the well, that remains in the well, and also what's already existing is similar. We are not very sure still the impact of the antiscalant, but the antiscalant we are using is 0.4 milligram per 0.4 liters per day. So it's not big, very, very small amount.
Right, and just a clarification, we're talking about desalination of groundwater, right?
Yeah.
Yes, because the groundwater
brackish.
turned brackish.
Yeah, we're talking about brackish water source where I think the average in Somalia is 3,700 ppm, where WHO standard is below 1,000. So you can see it is 3 times above the WHO standard.
Yes, yeah. And what about these the financing of these desalination units? How do you finance these innovative models?
In 2018, when Oxfam started, actually, we were using Oxfam innovation grants that's available from our Oxford office. But later on, we had several discussions, several meetings with some of the donors, and our learning has been constantly being presented in the cluster. Now we have some donors like Somalia Humanitarian Fund, which has funded 4 of the units. We have 5 units now. 4 of them was funded by them. UNDP has also came funding desalinations, and the private companies have also started. Like if Görrel water supply now, I think they are producing 900 meter cube with using desalination. So the private company who used to run brackish water source distribution for the town also tried to understood the knowledge that we had, and they are also investing. So investment is not a challenge, provided that we have alternative solution to the most expensive water tracking.
Yes, true. And we said we were also going to talk about a second project that's also innovative here in Somalia. So let's going to move to the more communication-driven project. Zakaria, during the COVID-19, you at Oxfam and many other organizations could no longer conduct any training, and as meetings were restricted in Somalia, like in all other places. So to conduct the training and keep on the training, you developed an app. Can you tell us about it, the Oxfam?
Yes. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we had restrictions and regulations to cope with the COVID-19, included limited the number of people who can gather, and limited transportation, whoever can travel, and as well as the number of people that we can bring together in a training. So, and within the staff, it was to come to the office was also challenging. Some of the staff were forced to work from home. So it was very difficult to work with communities and travel to the field. On the other hand, we had drought, which is a climate-induced problem and crisis, which requires our support and our humanitarian response. So to come up with solution, we have a community-based health volunteers who does on behalf of Oxfam community promotion and disseminating of hygiene messages. So to train them, we have come up with this app called Oxfam, where we have a COVID-19 and other hygiene-related sessions and lessons where they can learn, and when they learn, they can disseminate information to the other members of the community.
Yes, because you spoke that talked about the importance of fact-based information, and you told me that COVID-19 created a lot of panic and misconceptions, and that you could tackle this through the app. Was that correct?
Yes. So there was a lot of misconceptions when it comes to routes of transmission, prevention, and some related traditional issues. So within this app, we had learning materials which are translated into the first language of the country, which is Somali, where communities, volunteers can understand and then tell fact-based information to the communities. So some of these contents were related fact-based and evidence-based COVID-19 information, which has been published by good journalists and academicians.
Right. And today, I mean, we have, I shouldn't say COVID-19 is over because we're still living with it, But what kind of information and training do you conduct using the app today?
So in this app, it contains mainly on COVID-19, routes of transmission of this disease, blocking routes of transmission, other hygiene related practices, which like hand washing, best practices of hygiene and personal hygiene, communal hygiene, domestic hygiene, and environmental hygiene. So these are the main topics covered by the app.
Right. And if I understand it correct, it's an open source training, so anyone can join?
Yes, so it's an open source training, but however, it requires a username and a password someone to log in. So we provide whoever wants this to download it can find it in Play Store for Android, but we are still about to put it in App Store for iPhones, but it's available on Android devices.
On Android devices, all right. And what have been the challenges so far, you think?
Yeah, so some of the challenges was because community health volunteers are based in rural areas. So the app requires internet connection to download these videos and look at it. However, what we have done to come out to solve that situation was Oxfam staff bring the smartphones and download it and make it ready. So whenever we provide to the volunteers, they can read it offline, they can watch videos offline. So that was one of the challenge. The other challenge was reporting. So if they have anything to tell or information, because the app is under development, it was first trial, so they didn't had an opportunity or where they can report. Therefore, we used to use WhatsApp group that we brought all community health volunteers together where they can report how the progress of their work.
And another thing, when you think about training and communication, I often think about it as like a two-way communication. I mean, we have our chat here that people can ask questions and comments. How did you resolve the way of two-way communications when you had this app, your training app?
Yeah, as I have mentioned in earlier question, one of the challenges was that we don't have where the participants of the training can respond questions.
Sorry, I missed that.
Yeah, so this one of our agenda plans for the development where they are using on WhatsApp or other informal platforms, but we are trying to ensure that this platform accommodates a two-way communication where they can report, send pictures, because within this app we have used it also at the volunteers because we have provided them with smartphones. They can monitor other work-related activities. They can send pictures and videos on which was easier for us to solve that issues when we go to the field and improve the work.
So your plans are to expand the app and to develop it further?
Yes. So the plan is to develop and enhance this app to also make it available in iPhones so that everyone who has Android or iPhone can access it. On the other hand, the content of the learning materials which are there should be updated. In the meantime, now it's only COVID-19, but there are public health risks. Like here, we had dengue fever and AWD, which is acute watery diarrhea, which is usually during rainy season, which increases cases. So we are planning to develop in terms of content and make it more interactive videos and also two-way communication.
Right, that sounds great. One more thing before we let the chat in and the questions there. Like overall, what do you think COVID-19 has taught you in terms of communications?
Yeah, so it has taught us whenever there is a challenge, there is an opportunity. So there was COVID-19 challenge and these restrictions, but there was an opportunity that for us, we came out, which was related to developing our ideas and coming up with innovative solutions, which such this app. which can be possible even in a very remote areas in a rural setting in Somalia.
Right, thank you. We have a question here from Marissa saying, can we see the app somewhere? Is it possible to download, or do you have anywhere we can see it?
Yes, so I have how can I have a small presentation, but it is in, if someone download it, you can find it in a Play Store. I will share a link. I will share a link.
Share a link in the chat. And do you have a small presentation that you would like to share on your screen now?
Yeah, I can. Yeah. So this is the app.
Oxfam.
Yes, this is the name of the app, and this is the background. It's just mainly what I've thought about. Just told. This is the background, the COVID-19 and the situation, and this here are some of the training materials which are written in Somali language, talking about hand hygiene and best hygiene practices. We have it here, the benefits of the app, and that we are able, our volunteers were able to go to the field, capture high quality pictures in the intervention sites, disseminate best hygiene practices when it comes to prevention of COVID-19, and tackling with misconceptions related to COVID-19. And some of the lessons learned that we need in terms of internet access challenges, and also updating the app in terms of content. And this is Oxfam staff and volunteer. The lady is a community volunteer lady, and one of our Oxfam staff. The other one is left is a male, female, having smartphones being trained on. So yeah, thank you so much.
Right. You can send me that presentation, perhaps, Zakaria, in an email, and then I can distribute it to the participants in the workshop, and that will make them have some more information there. So there is a link to the Play Store, and we also have some questions relating to the desalination project. It's from Anne. Do you know whether pumping from the underground reservoir will result in drawing in more salt water to the reservoir? I guess that's a question for Ali. Ali, there we are, yeah.
Thank you very much. I have, I think, two questions in the chat box.
Yeah.
One was related with technology, why we are actually, why we are opting to the membranes technology instead of other technologies. And then the other one was about the abstraction. So
let's start with the abstraction, please.
Yeah. In regarding the abstraction, you know, the groundwater source that we have are all deep. They are, I think the average in Somalia is 220. And the average yield of a borehole is around 18 meter cube per hour. And what we are actually pumping is around 8 meter cube per hour, and 70% of that is being used as desalinated water. So we are trying as much as possible to limit the brain only to 30%. And then even that 30% is going into the ground. We have these dug wells where we have got some, you know, slow sand filters that has been created by us. Then all the brine is going there. Then the remains of the calcium carbonate. You know, the majority of the problem that we are treating in Somalia is calcium carbonate, and that is remaining within on the top layer, the first 5 centimeters of the dug well. So we are recharging whatever community can use is they are using, and we haven't seen any place where the groundwater is going deeper or maybe below the actual level. So maybe in the long run we are not very sure, because that will require some data collections and all. but it's not because of the desalination, but maybe because of the abstraction related to livestock watering and related to water tracking and so many other demand that needs to be also covered through that. So that's one. The technology, why we are looking at on the arrow technology.
Sorry, Ali, we're just going to read out the technology question because of the recording. Otherwise, the people
Okay.
who watch afterwards misses the question. So
Go
the
ahead,
question
please.
goes, if it's brackish water, why the choice to use membrane-based technology over other options of desalination that might cost less?
Thank you very much. We have done an assessment of the existing technologies. Some of the existing technology are heat-based technology where you push a lot of heat to the brackish water source and then try to evaporate, then condense, and that is also very energy intensive. And I think from our analysis of the available technology as we speak, globally even, it is the arrow membranes that are more cheaper, more affordable, and more easier to the communities also to later on own the system and maintain. So from that few words, I think we all agreed, and it's being used in Somalia, and there are markets of membrane technologies that's selling those. We have decided, I think this might be the best option. And actually, membranes that we had are working from 3 to 5 years, so they are not constantly being replaced. So that is one of the reasons why we are opting to that.
Right, thank you. If there are no more questions in the chat, then I have a last question, maybe for the two of you. And I wonder if these projects can be scaled. I guess that the app project is easier to scale maybe than the desalination project. But do you think that we can scale these projects in the Horn of Africa or East Africa or even globally? What would the challenges be?
Maybe we're starting with the desal. The scalability is there, and the demand and the appetite is also there. By last 2 weeks, I was here in Netherlands and attending a course in desalination, and even the Notre Dame water supply is 100% based on desalinated because of chemical contaminations and many other contaminants that cannot be removed by conventional water treatments. As Oxfam, when we started in 2018 in Somalia, then immediately there was a huge demand for the refugee response in Yemen. We have deployed one in Yemen. The assessment is currently ongoing for Central Africa, and also Kenya has also started in several locations, and globally, as you know, the climate change continues, and also we have problems of industrial pollution and all. Definitely, I see the only way that we can remove health hazardous chemicals is using reverse osmosis and the arrow membranes, and this is something that is in the future, maybe in the next few years, will be a major water supply system globally. So the scalability is there, and as I told you, UNDP has invested in Somalia. UNICEF is now looking around that for IDBs, private sector in Puntland, in part of Somaliland, in South Central, all urban water supply system, they are already changing to that. Instead of pumping 60 kilometer a fresh water source, it is quite easier operationally and also quite easier in terms of sustainability to treat water that you have in the area. So with all the challenges that we have faced, I think desalination is a technology that will be scaled up. Over to you, Zakaria.
Yes. So similarly, this app can be scaled up within Oxfam, other departments, including protection, and gender, they are interested in to have this similar app. However, the content of these materials are in Somali language and will be applicable within the Somali context. However, it can be scaled up to the region where content can be made it available to other local languages in the region, like Swahili, Amharic, and other languages in the region. So that I think it will be a very good app which could establish a very good communication within local community and technical experts which are in the depth.
Right, thank you. Thank you. So we're looking forward to upscale projects next year, maybe already. And no more questions, comments in the chat. Then I will thank Ali, Regah, and Zakaria for joining us today here at Waters in Communications. And we have Gabriella here saying perhaps it's needed more investigation on the groundwater extraction possible impacts in relation to sustainability of water, soil, and environment, water, soil, and environment interface. There has been some studies in India in that projects, in the projects that I worked in. So maybe that could be of interest also, Ali.
Yes, I think somebody else also has said groundwater recharge in the earlier comments in your earlier session, and that is where we should be going. You know, all our wastewater sources, even when we treat, we have to also use for groundwater recharge. So it is we are in an era where I think unless we recycle, we'll be running out of water very soon. And I think research and everything are showing to that, and I do agree with her. And that's why we are trying to make sure whatever we are throwing away from this missile is going back to the ground. And we are also following up on what are some changes in terms of impacts. And we have seen in some other areas, brackish water sources are also being used to grow, you know, salt tolerant vegetables. And also some of the areas in, I think in Nairobi, where I have seen, they are also growing fish. Nobody knows what the impact of antiscalant on fish, but fish likes the brackish, water that's coming out of the sun. So I 100% agree, groundwater recharge is a critical issue, what we are looking at from our side in Somalia. And I hope in India and everywhere, we should be looking at the same. And
Right.
thank you very much for having us in this session.
Thank you. Anne also says, last comment here, I'd also suggest to check out groundwater surveillance with TEM technology. That's another comment.
We are actually doing surveillance using remote monitoring systems. What we are actually monitoring is the level of groundwater during rainy season and also dry season, and also we are monitoring the quality of the groundwater during the dry season and its rainy season. So we have as a cluster also, I think in Somalia, around 23 locations where sensors have been mounted. And we are still with funding from KfW, German government. There is a possibility of UNICEF scaling up that monitoring. So it is ongoing. Definitely, people want to understand the impact of rain, the impact of drought and groundwater in Somalia. And I think this type of monitoring systems will definitely tell us something good, but it will take some time, minimum 5-6 years to monitor.
Right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks again, Ali, and thanks again, Zakaria, for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're at the end of today's session. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us in today's workshop.